So we work with refugees and immigrants, and one of the very specific thing that we do now is actually working with people, those who are here legally, what we call the humanitarian parole. And those people came here with the humanitarian parole, mostly from, Haiti, Venezuela, Ukraine, and some of those countries. And so what has happened is that, they are here legally, and then they have work authorizations, and then they have been working. But then with the executive order and also the Homeland Security memo that was passed especially in January 27, invoking the Leg and Rely Act, for those people, those who have been here with the humanitarian parole, if they have not applied for any benefit, such as TPS or asylums, they will not be able to. They will be deported. So that was what they were. That's what I think has been. People are very afraid of it. Why am I not able to see the screen though? Like that, I'm not able to manipulate the PowerPoint. Okay, let me see. Okay, there's. I'm sorry. Are you able to see my PowerPoint, by the way?
Yes, we see it. It's the
Okay.
Haiti, Ukraine, and Venezuela slide.
Yeah, but then why am I not able to control it?
You'll need to make sure you're clicking inside of PowerPoint and not Zoom. So you may need to go back over to the PowerPoint window itself.
Oh.
You may also have to be in slideshow mode.
Mar,
Yeah.
let me ask you this. If you can email the presentation to me.
I did email it to you.
Okay, let me open it. What I'd like to do is if you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
I would like for Robert Vivar to present. And then I would like to come back to you. Is that okay?
All right, that's fine.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay. Robert, are you available and ready? Okay, so let me, yes, I am bringing up your presentation now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have been invited to this incredible presentation. My name is Robert Vivar, and I'm currently the Immigration and Border Missioner for the Episcopal Diocese of San Diego. And I'm also a part of a organization called Border Church. Border Church is a binational non-denominational church that serves our migrant and deported community in the San Diego, Tijuana area. And Border Church has been something that has been incredibly important, not only to our community, but also to myself directly. And with the support that we have received by the American Baptist Church, we are able to continue to minister to our deported community and our separated community in the San Diego, Tijuana area.
Robert, this is
yes.
Jennifer. We have a request in the chat if you can speak a little more loudly. So if you're able to adjust your microphone nearer to your mouth and bring your best preacher voice, we would love to hear everything you have to share.
Okay, how about now?
A little better. Try a little more.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me better?
Okay, I'm seeing a message from our IT consultant. Saeed, do you have a quick instruction you can give that might improve?
Yeah, one of two things. One, make sure that your mic is selected in the options inside of Zoom under audio. And then two, a little extra click here, but if you click on the little arrow next to the mic and then go to settings, there's a slider that lets you increase the volume of your microphone.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me better?
Thank you, yes. I've seen
Okay.
head nods.
Great, excellent. Anyway, this is something very, very personal. This type of work to myself and Border Church is very important because I myself was deported. I was born in Tijuana, Mexico. I grew up in Riverside, California. And after living many years legally in the United States, I was deported. And Border Church was incredibly important to me because that was the place that I was able to find an opportunity to reconnect and really expand my relationship with Christ in order to be able to return one day home to where I grew up with my family. The picture that I am showing on the slide is actually a reunion that occurred while I was still deported, right at the Border Church, right at the U.S.-Mexico border, where families back in 2016 were allowed 2 minutes each family, and these were 5 families that were allowed to actually hug across the border wall. As you can see, I'm there with my son and my granddaughters, and in the background are Border Patrol agents that were there on duty during the event. One of the big problems that occur when you're deported is that you don't accept where you're at, and you try to look for ways to be able to return back. And unfortunately, many times you don't seek to return legally, but rather you seek to return in an illegal manner, which can really be frustrating and dangerous, as we have seen in many occasions. The acceptance is incredibly difficult to accept where you're at and where you go from there. And again, that was one of the main things that through Border Church I was able to gain that acceptance, but also to increase that relationship with Christ, to motivate me to continue to fight. The second thing that is very important is that you need to be productive. You need to be a productive member of your community so that you are not a burden on your family members. And at the same time that you keep your mind occupied on positive things because of the trauma, the depression, anxiety that you go through, it is very easy to fall into ill friendships, into negative things that will only hurt any kind of opportunity for you to be able to return legally to the country that you left behind. Thank you. This is part of the realities that we lived on this border. The families that are seeking protection that come to our Tijuana area. And as you can see, these are families that are crossing over through the primary border wall, where they will remain in between the two walls to turn themselves into Border Patrol seeking protection. And of course, we know that since last June, that has been a lot more difficult for families that are entering in between the ports of entry to be able to could gain an approval for a humanitarian parole. And nowadays, with the present administration, we know that it is almost impossible to be able to achieve that. The main part of Border Church is again to bring hope and increase faith of families that have been separated by the broken immigration system, but also to bring hope to our migrant community that are seeking protection in our country. This next slide shows a little bit of the work that we continue to do at the port of entry, or pardon me, at Border Church. At the moment, Border Church cannot be carried out as a binational communion service that we were having with the pastor on the U.S. side, pastor on the Mexico side, because Friendship Park, where the actual Border Church, the open air Border Church is at, is not accessible on the U.S. side. So therefore, what we have done in order to continue ministering to asylum-seeking migrants that are in between the two border walls is that on Sundays when we carry out Border Church, we are doing it from a location called Whiskey 8, which is in San Diego. And what we do is every Sunday we go out and carry out a communion service. And as you can see in this particular picture, that is one of our migrant brothers that was receiving communion across the border wall. So this is part of the work that Border Church does, is to try to continue to keep families together, the families that have been separated by the broken immigration system, but also to bring hope to our asylum-seeking community that we encounter in between the border walls, seeking protection from the U.S. government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm returning to Mar's presentation. And
You want me to try to share it, or?
if you like, I can share it and then allow you to
Okay.
just tell me when to advance it, if that's okay for you.
I'm trying to share it. Can you see it now?
And I'm able to share my screen, and
Okay. All right. All right.
you can then just speak from there.
All right, good.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Sorry for the inconvenience. I just need some more help. But anyway, so as I said, our work is kind of very much tailored towards specific community that we work with, although there's a lot of needs for many immigrants. But then we have been working mostly with the parolees, people, those who have come here legally, and then they have, they have the work authorization and everything. But I think with the, can you move to the next slide, please? So with the, current Homeland Security memo, and also with the executive order, they have invoked the Lake and Riley Act, which has really made this expedited removal for humanitarian parolees. So these humanitarian parolees are mostly people, those who have come during the last administration. But the situation is really fluid. It's changing all the time. For instance, like you might have heard about the recent revocation of the Venezuelan TPS for certain group of the, not the whole Venezuelan, but then people those who have come in October 3, 2023. So each individual case is different, and then it is very difficult for us to give some blanket advice. We do have what we call know your rights, and also other very generic information about how to do work around with, if you are being detained by ICE. But then it's very difficult for us to give. So, but we are just so fortunate that we have an immigration attorney in our board as, a board member of MBMM. And also some of those immigration attorneys that we have connected, they are willing to provide a much more subsidized, not pro bono, but then very much subsidized fees for legal fees to process some of the individual case. So we are doing that as we move forward. Can you move to the next slide, please? So, this is just in general, right? For the parolee, Haiti continues, who have been in residence since June 3, 2024. Ukrainian is very, sensitive because for Ukrainian, many people, we can't really present it for asylum cases because that's not the context for Ukrainian. But we were able to see whether to give any kind of a benefit for people, those who have families and can be a sponsor for green card. And now Venezuela's situation is really fluid, so it's really difficult. And then we are trying to advise and suggest that they apply for asylum cases. I just would like to give one personal note here. Last week, when this Right and Rally Act was enacted and then passed an information about those people, those who have not filed for immigration benefit, one of our friends from Honduras, Henry, he was arrested by ICE and taken away from the family. And as a matter of fact, the only crime that he has committed, so-called crime that he has committed, was he was pulled over by the cops like 6 years ago before Family Mobility Act was passed here in Massachusetts for driving without the driver license. There is a good news and bad news here, but because Henry and his family has already applied for asylum case, but they were waiting to be heard by a judge. But now with this, expedited removal being placed to him, there is a possibility that his case will be heard faster by a judge. But at the same time, it's just very uncertain how things will move as, with all this really hyped up movement about really trying to remove all the so-called illegal immigrants. So that's something that we have done. All right, so let's move to the next slide, please. What had happened is that we have been running after school program and, a ESL program and all this, but things has improved a little bit from this week. But last week when things were just enacted and the memo was passed, a lot of our after school school participants were afraid to come. There were only 4 people that showed up. We normally have more than 35 kids showed up in our after school program. So what we decided to do was that since they were so much afraid to move from one place to the other and then being detained because our building is locked, and then we have a strong protocol that we follow about the safety of our, New Americans that we serve. But then they were afraid that they will be detained when they are coming to, so we have to start providing some transportation for our, our children to come to the center. And that's what we see here, some kids, being cramped up in the small minivan and then, coming here to our after school program. Can we move to the next slide, please? And these are some of the programs that we offer: ESOL, financial literacy, New American Holiday Party, and after school program. These are mostly tailored about all this New American program. We call it ACE, Center for New Americans. ACE is for Advocate, Celebrate, and Empower New Americans here in, in Massachusetts, especially in the Greater Lowell area. So if you wanted to know more about it, you can visit our website, but this is just part of work that we do. And then what has been impacted is about our ESL program and New American, the after school program. All right, so these are some of the dedicated volunteers that we have. And then these volunteers, now we have shifted gear, people, those who are bringing people to our center. And are also now we have people going to their homes so that they can help them with their homeworks or, just give us support. So that is what is being done. Just one few things, some really good advantage and practical help that we are able to get is that, people like us here in Home Mission Society, networking has been very helpful, but we are very much strongly partnering with many local partner organizations here and also with other, state-sponsored program. And this has been very helpful. And, we closely work with the Attorney General here in Massachusetts, and the Attorney General has been giving us a lot of helpful hints and also actually direction to the school and many other services that we provide. So I'm sure there is a lot of resources in each state that is very specific to your own community. I just would like to play a short video here. It's 50 seconds by one of our immigrants here.
Keep talking. I just need to make sure I share audio. Keep
All
going.
right. Okay. His name is Charles Frisnell. He is actually also himself as a humanitarian parolee, and he has been the person who has been really a person that has been talking and advocating and connecting with a lot of our Haitian and Latinx parolees. So this is his voice in Creole.
En premier lieu, non pas moi, c'est Pasteur Charles Fritznel. Donc, moi, content pour me capable parler nous un peu de Haïtiens qui vivent dans la communauté. Donc, c'est pour la première fois que Haïtiens vivent ce genre de situation ça. Ici aux États-Unis, c'est pas un bagage qui est aussi facile pour eux-mêmes. Il y en a qui ont peur, qui n'ont pas sorti, ils n'ont pas sorti, ils n'ont pas le travail.
All right. And this is the last slide. And actually, we are having another Know Your Rights and then very general information tonight. And we already have a lot of people sign up. And this shows that we are not just working alone, but we are collaborating with like-minded organizations. And that's the way to go for in a time like such as this, for us to collaborate and network with as many people as we can. And we also have been, working with some of the churches, especially with some Episcopal churches for the sanctuary church movement. And, there is no sanctuary church of the American Baptist churches that we are aware of here in Massachusetts, but there are some other denominations that is declared as a sanctuary church, and we try to work together with them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I know it's just really a preliminary work that we do, but then we are just kind of sharing how our work and then our new Americans are impacted because of the changes in policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to ask Dr. Michael if you will present to us. Following Michael's presentation, we will begin the Q&A time. And again, you can notice there's a tool option. You need to click on More for placing your questions, and we'll address those when we come to that time. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you everybody for being here. I want to talk a little bit about the sanctuary movement because that's what I'm a scholar of and an activist in, and how I've spent the past 10 or so years writing about it and engaging with it. I pastor a sanctuary church here in Evanston, Illinois. It's called Lake Street Church of Evanston, and we have redoubled our commitment to sanctuary here during these times because we think it's really important. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the sanctuary movement is and how it got its start. And it got its start in the 1980s, basically as a form of resistance to Reagan's policy of denying asylum to those fleeing regimes that were backed by the United States, and as a humanitarian effort right there at the border to ease suffering. Houses of worship housed Central American refugees back in the 1980s, and they gave them a platform to speak and to also name primarily the source of the misery in their home country, which was often U.S. imperialism. So in 2014, there was the new sanctuary movement got its start, and it is used the same sort of tactic, but it was primarily focused not on Central American refugees, but on folks who were in danger of being deported, and so undocumented people, and it was meant to push back against a broken immigration system. So both of these movements, the original sanctuary movement in the 1980s and the new sanctuary movement, are united by their signature practice of churches, other houses of worship, of proclaiming their worship space as safe refuges from ICE or INS previously, and from that intervention, and I think largely also as a symbolic protest. The amount of people shielded by these actions is vanishingly small, but as both the Quran and the Talmud say, to save one life is as if you have saved the entire world. So the sanctuary movement of the 1980s was pretty effective. And so you have a bunch of different sanctuary cities, states, campuses, and more that sort of took root from the activism of the sanctuary movement in the 1980s. And they won and delivered a critical legal reform that's called ABC v. Thornburg. And ABC v. Thornburg, actually the ABC in it is for American Baptist churches. Don't get too excited though, but we were the named plaintiff because it was in alphabetical order, and so we were the first with the letter A that started. So we were part of that for sure, but not the only religious organization. There were a lot of religious organizations that sued to bring about a better outcome for asylum cases, and they leave this legacy today, which is increasingly under attack. And as we see in the news all the time, there's conversations about sanctuary cities being defunded, sanctuary campuses investigated, etc. So what does becoming a sanctuary church mean? It means a lot of different things. It's not necessarily specific to one. There's not one definition of it, but it certainly means opening your church up as a place of safety and refuge during times of crisis. It means saying unequivocally that you're not going to cooperate with ICE, and is also, I think, and this is really important, a theological claim about the belovedness of those who are facing deportation, about their worthiness, their inherent human dignity that can't be stripped by ICE edicts or can't be rescinded by the government in any way. And it probably looks different based on your context. For someone closer to the border, that's going to look different than being in Chicagoland, like I am, and that's where I'm based. It's also not likely to happen fast because sanctuary's legality is up for grabs, and that makes plenty of church bodies nervous. So the big question, is sanctuary legal? I always answer this with a resounding maybe. The fact is that there were prosecutions in the 1980s that were also so embarrassing for the federal government that they stopped doing that. They stopped having these prosecutions, but it could happen again. And what seems clear is that sanctuary has plenty of theological and sociological power, but the law says that churches are pretty much no different from your local Starbucks when it comes to enforcement. Sanctuary is less about claiming legality and that these places are safe from incursion, and it is more about leveraging the incredible privilege that American religious communities possess in our corporate lives together in America. Particularly, I would think also white churches and their privilege that they have. That their privilege is more, and I think there's more of an obligation there. So sanctuary churches are not necessarily legal, but the fact is we will find out if a case goes to the Supreme Court, just how legal it is. So sanctuary churches aren't doing this alone, right? So it's they sort of form one node in a matrix of action networks and places dedicated to defending immigrants, documented and undocumented. So your local refugee organizations, immigrant coalitions, and political organizations, depending on your state attorney general could be really active in this work. You're going to want to connect also with police and with local politicians. These folks all have roles to play. I happen to pastor a sanctuary church in a sanctuary city. So that makes my dealing with police different than perhaps yours. So there's all sorts of ways to navigate this. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not talking about the legality of it, but I am talking about the basic community organizing of it. A lot of these, you can't do this sort of work alone. You have to form coalitions. Hopefully they're multi-faith coalitions, and hopefully they come and draw from all different parts of the civil society that I was talking about. There might even be, and this would be awesome if there was, a sanctuary coalition in your community from the 1980s that's still around. or from the new sanctuary movement if you live in a particular urban center. Those are great places to go for resources and ways to do this work. I would say that a lot of these have atrophied over the past few decades. So I was asked also to talk a little bit about self-care in these really trying times, and I hope that everyone who is on the front lines of thinking about this and responding to it can think about ways to practice self-care. That means taking care of our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And maybe that looks like healthy eating or carving out time for meditation, or just taking some time during your day that's not focused on confronting the next catastrophe, but taking care of yourself so that you can take care of others. I think it's true that the current administration's strategy is to destabilize things so much that we feel constantly sort of barraged by this. And if we can take some time to center ourselves, I think that would be really wise. And for some people on this webinar, I want to acknowledge the impossibility of that. I think it's more possible for some people than it is for others, that things are too all-consuming or precarious to practice self-care, or those for whom health sounds like a privilege they can ill afford. How we find community and how we reframe this in womanist ethics and thinking about community care, I think that can perhaps address some of these issues. How are you finding community? How are you taking care of community together, and how are you being taken care of by your community? The self is inextricably bound up with the whole, and I think that might be one way that we can think about our self-care. And thank you so much for thinking with me a little bit about Sanctuary. If you want to do some more organizing around Sanctuary and American Baptist Life, I hope you'll give me an email. There's an email right there. I've been having a bunch of slides with people from all sorts of different contexts, and I believe that ABHMS might even make it even easier to connect on this issue, which is fantastic, and I appreciate their partnership. There's also the book that I wrote about the Sanctuary Movement, if you're so inclined. Thank you.
Many words of appreciation to all of you. And there's comments of appreciation that are also in the chat. The way we are going to proceed is by asking and recording some of the general questions. But then there's going to be a time where we will stop recording to allow maybe people who might not feel as comfortable asking their questions while the recording is happening. And during that time when we are not recording, we're going to ask Ashley Wammerling, who will introduce herself and say more about why her presentation is happening without the recording. But let me begin with just a few questions that people have populated in the Q&A section. And one is about signage. And so our church is putting up signs that say ICE is not welcome in our sanctuary building, and to designate private locked spaces that ICE cannot enter. Is there specific language that you recommend for these signs? So Mar or Michael, do you have instructions about the signs that you want to?
Sure. I mean, so there's your sanctuary is probably a public space, but there are private spaces within your churches, and you can. There's a lot of different language of signs. Ours says that we don't give permission for ICE to enter our holy space. There's a bunch of different signs that you can put up. One person asked if it's legal to put them up. It's legal to put them up. How effective? I think that's another question. As far as the sanctuary, it is sort of a public space, and that's going to be a little bit harder. But I think there's plenty of these signs available online. They're part of a lot of Know Your Rights toolkits that are easily downloaded. All of them are probably just as good as the next, and in my opinion, I think it's good practice to put them up, and I think it's good practice to let not just ICE know, but other people know that you do care about folks in the community. I would say also, try to make sure you're not the only church that puts these up if you're doing work with refugees and immigrants, because it sort of can make it very obvious what you're doing. And it's much better in a community if all the churches are going to put that up, because it makes you less of a target and you stand out a little less. And that's just my experience. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it is. I think Michael said very well. If there are quite a few churches that is having this kind of a signage in front of their churches, that is much more powerful a way of presenting it. Because what has been happening for organizations like us, a very small organization, we have been targeted. I have received a lot of emails and even, hard copy mail and then phone calls saying, here, what are you doing? Why are you doing this and that? So there is all the time this danger of, when you're raising your flags being targeted. But I think you should be ready for that. So it really depends on the location. But I think, for us, our organization is quite straightforward with what we do. But, I've received a lot of letters, even personal letters addressed to me, and also email and phone calls. So I think that's inevitable for us as we move forward. But I think if there are collective churches and network and a city that are coming together, I think that'll be much more powerful.
Thank you. There are a lot of questions around the know your rights in a snapshot, or where can a church easily access that information. We will be providing links to resources at near the end of this call and after this call. But the short answer is yes, there are resources that are good summaries and easily accessible and easily digestible in multiple languages. And we'll be providing that information to you shortly. And actually, I will bring it up sooner in the Q&A. I will place it in the chat just again because there are a lot of questions asking that specifically.